So we are streaming, I believe, on Facebook now. So I am really happy that technology, I think, is working. You know, most everyone that knows me knows that technology is not my friend. I'm technologically impaired and proud of it, but I am really happy that you know, David and I have known each other for a very long time, and we started working together. Oh golly, maybe we don't want to say how long ago, but it's I'm excited about this new element for David to bring to us today. This is hot off the presses. It's brand new and it's already getting, and attracting a lot of attention. And I talked to him about a week ago and I said, would you like to do an interview and just allow more people to know that it is available? And so, David, tell everybody a little bit about your background
Sure.
and
Thank you, Gary.
why you wrote the book.
Uh, well, for the record, just so you know, I have got 8 Gary Barnes binders from the boot camps. I just counted them the other day. It's been a while. It's been a while.
Yeah.
So I started off as a divorce and family lawyer about 25 years ago, just sort of whoever walked in the door we were representing. So it was men, it was women, it was divorces, it was domestic violence stuff, it was child custody. And over the years, we've kind of refined that down. We've gone from everybody to just men to now we're really focusing in on dads because the way the society has changed, there's fewer and fewer marriages. And if there's fewer marriages, that means there's also going to be fewer divorces. But that doesn't stop people from having children. And so we still have these issues of child custody. And when parents have a child and they don't have the legal status of being married, we have to figure out what's going to happen with legal custody. And that's the ability to have information about your child's medical care, dental care, psychological care, schools. And then we also have physical custody. Where is the child going to be sleeping and spending time with? And normally that stuff defaults to the mom as a result of we know who the parent is there. There's no question these days as to the parentage between mother and child. There is oftentimes with father and child. We don't know for a fact. Sometimes, occasionally, about 30% of those cases that actually go and get tested for DNA, they find out dad's not actually the dad. So because of that, we make dads actually go to court to stand up and say, yes, this is my child. I'm accepting this as my responsibility. I want to be a parent. Now we have to figure out custody, visitation, holiday schedules, how these two people are going to work together to raise a child, even though they're not married and in a different type of relationship than they started with. And for me, I came to this as a single gay man with no kids. And all of a sudden, I find myself fighting for dads. And a lot of times people are asking me, what in the heck is going on there? Like, how did you, the single gay man, end up an advocate for dads and children? And the reality is, I would sit in courtrooms and I would be representing whether a mother or a father. And I would just see men walk up and they go, Your Honor, I'm a great dad. I want my 50% custody. And they'd shut up because they had no idea what else to say. And they would get just destroyed in family court because they've got nothing else to say. And mom's coming in and she's telling the judge that he's not around, he's a negligent parent, he doesn't know the kids, all this stuff. And dad doesn't know how to argue for himself. He doesn't know how to advocate all the good things that he brings to being a father. And so I saw there was a need here and I tried doing it one-on-one and I'm very good one-on-one, but the reality is a lot of people can't afford lawyers because at anywhere from $300 to $900 an hour, our bills get racked up really quickly. And unless people are really fighting hard for something and they're really willing to make huge sacrifices, they just simply can't afford lawyers. And that's true not only across the country, but I'm getting TikToks and DMs from across the planet where men are going through this exact same situation of, I want to be a more active father. I want to be more engaged. How do I represent myself in court? I can't afford a lawyer. What do I do? And that's why I ended up writing this book, Dad's Child Custody Action Plan. It's an outgrowth of my course, Dad's Law School, which is dadslawschool.com, where dads can come, and I've got video courses that teach them how to represent themselves in family court. I walk them through the process of what's going to be in a declaration, how do they present themselves to the judge, how do they gather evidence, and then how do they use that evidence actually at trial. Part of the problem that dads have is once they're out of the relationship with the mother, a lot of times they don't have the social support. They don't have the family support. They don't have a network of people to help them as they're processing the trauma of family court and being alone and isolated from your kids, not getting to see them as much as you want. So one of the things we do at Dad's Law School is we have a support group. Twice a month, we meet up with dads on Zoom and they start sharing their stories. And if they've done the video courses and they have questions, they can come in. I'll answer their questions, and we go from 10 to whenever they're done on every second and fourth Saturday. 10 a.m. I start Los Angeles time, and sometimes we're done at 10:30. Oftentimes it's more like 12. Because once these guys start getting to know each other and they start sharing their stories and they start knowing each other's kids and they get involved and they're like, what happened at soccer practice? Well, tell me about what happened here and what's going on with the kid. They get into each other's family, and now they're actually becoming a family of their own. They're supporting themselves. And then during the week, we have a WhatsApp group for text messaging so dads can communicate with each other. And then obviously they're going to make friends and they're going to communicate offline one-on-one. But we have this sort of community water cooler that guys can come in and talk about what's going on in their life. And so that's what I have started, was this community that I'm building of dads who are going through family court problems and trying to give them the resources and the support they need, because so many of them don't have the access to their support, don't know what they're supposed to be doing. They don't have a ton of money. And so I've created something that can actually help a lot of people at scale. And that is mostly due to Gary Barnes just kicking me in the butt for the last however many years, telling me to keep going. Gary, you're all frozen. What's going on there, buddy? We're having a technological problem here.
You are not frozen. There you are.
You are.
And on Zoom, you are. But one of the things that, has always drawn me to David is, as a divorce attorney, particularly in the LA area, where everybody is out for blood, particularly the attorneys, they don't care who wins. They just care about their fees and going after, the most for them. And the people that really get forgotten are the children. And for David to have this unique area to where he really cares about the kids, and some people are going to get divorced no matter what. And one of the first things that David ever told me was he really doesn't believe in divorce, which is really weird. He'd really see them reconcile and figure things out and do the things that are best for the family, not just for the two individuals that are doing the warring with each other. It's like, some of you know that you've been to my events. I talk about the little genius, where you got these two little kids in adult clothes going after each other. And that's called court. And then you add in the little genius of the two attorneys going after each other. And now you really got a circus going on. And that really makes and separates David from the norm. And so, and what's unique is so many women are looking at this, David. Your community has always been and has been developed around guys, around men. And women are starting to come up and say, it's us too. We have had the same situation with the guy that is either got more money, more power, more contacts, more something. And can this help me? So is that a real connection for you as well?
Absolutely, because women certainly go through this. About a third of my TikTok following, and I've got about 52,000 followers right now on TikTok, and we're at about 21,000 on Instagram. And about a third in each of those communities are women. And they pretty much fall into two main categories. One is they're the women who are going through it themselves. They are the quote unquote like masculine energy in the relationship. They're the ones who are being kind of set up before the divorce happens or the breakup happens, and they kind of get blindsided, and all of a sudden they're in this battle for custody, and it's nasty and ugly. And the other big population that we see is second wives and grandmothers who are seeing the man they love, their son they love, the grandchildren they want to see being kept from them. And so they're coming in and saying, how can we help support the people that we love through this process? Like, they need help. And so what we're finding is that they're coming in and buying the book, they're calling me, they're watching the videos, they're commenting on the TikToks, because they're finding the resources are helpful. Because the point of this book is to make clear to the judge why you're a great parent. I could just as easily, I could take this book, I could literally like do a find and replace, take out dads, put in moms, and for the most part, the same stuff's going to apply. Because at the end of the day, what it really boils down to is, how well is the judge understanding what's going on in the family dynamics? That's what they really need to see. That's what they need to have explained. And sometimes moms are great at that. And I've sat in court, I've seen moms like do not great jobs themselves, advocating for themselves. You know, there's two reasons why people hire lawyers. One, you can't shut up and you talk too much and you talk yourself out of a win. And two, you freeze in public speaking. You get up there and it's so filled anxiety that you don't know what to say. And so you need somebody to be your voice. With this, if I'm giving you the kind of a script of what to say in your declaration, that's the letter to the judge that happens before you actually show up in court. And then with actual like bullet points of when you're actually in front of the judge, here's how you speak. Here's how to address the judge. The first chapter in this book is how to talk to the judge, because that's the biggest fear people have going into court is, I don't know what I'm supposed to say. I don't know what I'm allowed to say. Can I be really assertive? How do I do that? Do I just have to like bow down and take whatever they say? No, the reality is judges are public servants. They have a job to do. They need to do it as good as possible. And they need you to be there to be an advocate for yourself, the same way the other sides can be advocate for themselves, because both parties need to be advocating for the child. Because at the end of the day, that's what all of this is really about. People can fight over the Tupperware. They can spend all kinds of money fighting over silly things. I've fought over Tupperware. So you laugh, but I have actually done it. Not my finest hour, but had to be done.
So, and we wanted to have this call not to be a quote by my stuff, but we wanted to give some actual, some of the main points out of the book that people can really take a pithy relationship to and say, there is possibilities, or maybe even see themselves, oh, I did that. How do I rectify that? So let's throw out, maybe 2, 3, 4, 5, really keys that you see that people make mistakes with.
The first billing that I get all the time, people come out of court, they call me up, they're like, the judge wouldn't even look at my evidence. And I say, okay, talk to me about what happened. I had 300 text messages that prove that they're gatekeeping and that they're being difficult and they're keeping the kid from me. Like, okay. Did you submit those properly? What do you mean? Okay, so you didn't. Because there's a whole procedure for taking an exhibit and saying, Your Honor, I'd like to mark and identify plaintiff's exhibit A as a letter from mom to dad dated June 12th, 2024. Now you've got an exhibit that's been marked and identified. The other side has an opportunity to object, to test it, test its veracity, test how reliable it is it accurate? And then when they stop having an objection, I can say, Your Honor, I'd like to offer into evidence plaintiff's exhibit A. The judge will say any objection, no objection. Now it's in evidence. Now the judge can look at that letter and rely on it. Most people don't do that with their evidence going into court. And so when they walk out of court, the judge hasn't looked at any evidence because none of it was offered and properly submitted to the court. I have a script in the back of this book. We deal with how to lay a proper foundation to take an exhibit into evidence. And we've got it for the main things that people are going to be dealing with. Text messages. Here's the exact script. Pictures. People love to say, I've got this picture. Great. But if it's not properly authenticated, judge can't rely on it. We have emails. The email script is crucial because one of the biggest things when people are not using Our Family Wizard or Talking Parents, those emails, maybe they're authentic, maybe they're manufactured. Depends on how it's, whether or not it's going to actually be true. Video. People these days, everyone's got video. Well, you've got to properly authenticate the video before it can be admitted into court. You have to have a transcript of that video. Voicemail. Occasionally people use voicemail these days. It's a little old school. Most things are on text. The other big area that dads have frequently, this is actually a little bit more gender bias in reality. It's the kid inventory. Tell me everything you know about your kid. Because mom will generally walk into court and be, dad doesn't know anything about the kid. He doesn't know their doctors, their dentists, their teachers, their best friends. He doesn't even know their shoe size. I don't know why, but it's always the shoe size. They love throwing that one in. It's like a constant. But what I did was I created 123 questions. Tell me what you know about your son. Tell me what you know about your daughter. Tell me their best friend. Tell me their likes. What are they allergic to? What do they hate? Who's their favorite cartoon character? All of these questions so that when you're writing the declaration to the judge, you can start putting those facts in because I've brought them to mind for you. Now you can actually tell the judge, Your Honor, she says I'm not involved. I don't know the kids, but I know these 23 things about my child. We do these 14 activities together. Here's proof, here's pictures, here's receipts of time we spend with our child. So that when mom's saying I'm not around, I'm going to say, that may be her truth. My truth is I'm an active and engaged parent, and here's the hard evidence to prove it. You be the judge, you decide. So those are a few things that are in this book that help people when they're going into court make the case on why they're a great parent and why they should have equal parenting time.
It's something that just occurred to me for everyone that's listening and will listen on the replays is that David did not write this book in order to be a bait and switch to get clients in divorce cases. He's really doing this to help primarily people that are not able to, again, afford, like what he had mentioned in the beginning. And so many people are looking for those tips, those, how do I do this? And really, it's not out there anywhere. That's the biggest thing. And
Right.
so that's why this is so unique because it's almost like in school where everybody talks about what they've done and not done, and none of it's true. And so
Yeah.
people are learning from people that don't know. And so I just wanted to bring that up, that this is not a marketing, ploy for, legal work for him to, bring new clients on. This is truly an effort of, let's get some information out there that's really going to impact people, both the adults and the children. And, it is sad because if a child goes through divorce that's in a really ugly, where they become pawns in the process, the odds are they're going to have challenges in their personal relationships when they become adults themselves. And
Absolutely.
so if we can do anything, I'm the weird guy. Coming up in June, I've been married 51 years. I couldn't afford a divorce, like, so, it'd just be really ugly. But I don't want. But it's something that I know. I see it enough in my different practices. I owned a financial planning firm that was very large, went through that, and it's a no-win situation. But how do we maintain the civility and the kindness that the kids are taken truly into consideration? And that's what this is all about.
I'm hoping that I can get more people to be more effective when they're going into court. Because the goal is if we can get them more effective, they won't have to go back time and time again. The judge will make better decisions. And if they're not going to court all the time, it's more likely that they're going to have a sense of peace and calm and be able to have a better relationship as they're raising that child.
So the we have a chat set up, particularly those of you that are on Zoom. I'll be checking the chat. If you have any specific questions for David, we're wanting to this be as interactive as possible. You could just throw something in the chat, and we can monitor that as well. So, what would you think is the, we have a tendency to look at what shouldn't we do instead of what should we do? Are there things that, let's say that we're going into we know there's a difficulty in our marriage, but is there things that we could do to prevent and maybe, direct the circumstances in a different direction? What do you think?
What, preventing divorce or preventing a breakup?
Yes, or if it is going to be a breakup, how to maybe negotiate it in a more amicable way to where it's not as adversarial. Because sometimes by the time people get to the divorce court, they've already done some really stupid things. And by that time, things have been said, things have been done. And now you're unraveling something that can't be unraveled. And so there's really, you're mitigating damages. But what would you say to the pre people where this would still be valuable information in the book, because the information that you're dealing with on how to negotiate and how to mediate in a divorce could also be in that pre state where you know that maybe we shouldn't be married.
One of the things, there's this guy, Chris Voss, and Chris Voss was an FBI negotiator, and he wrote this book, Never Split the Difference. And one of the most valuable tools in his book, I think, and I tell all my guys in the VIP program, which is my group coaching, the first thing I want you to do is do an accusation audit. And Chris Voss uses an accusation audit as a tool to get into the mind of the other person. What are they thinking about me? What are they going to condemn me with? What are they saying I'm doing wrong? And the first thing you can do is get into the other person's mindset and start viewing things instead of from our own egocentric kind of me victim view. What are they seeing? And what I've found is that the more they do that, the easier it is for them to start making concessions and to come to a realization of forgiveness in the relationship, which makes everything better. Because if they can then say to their partner, I know I made a mistake here, here, and here. I think you're seeing it this way, and I think you're right because I was wrong. That takes a lot of the heat out of the arguments. All of a sudden, people are in a very different position because now they're going to be focused on the problem, attack the problem, not each other. And that's one of the biggest issues. In family court, people want to fight each other. They don't want to fight the problem. It's like that old consulting quest story that everybody always tells of the two kids and the one orange. There's two kids, there's a boy and a girl, and there's one orange, and they need to split the orange. And what mom does is cuts the orange in half, and neither party is happy. But had mom actually asked, well, daughter, why do you want to use it? Well, I want orange juice. Well, son, why do you want to use it? I need the rind to make cookies. I want the zest. Had they just explored what they really wanted, they could have both been completely satisfied. Had somebody actually dug in and looked at what the problem is of, we've got one unit of something that needs to be shared. We have one child that needs to be shared. What's going to be in that child's best interest? Well, dad's bringing a certain skill set to the relationship. Mom's bringing a certain skill set to the relationship. If we look at what does that child need, maybe we can have that child get everything they need from two different parents. One's the zest, one's the juice. And if we can get out of ourselves, and it's hard. I mean, I know it's hard when you're in the midst of a breakup and your ego is hurt and maybe there's some other issues going on. to step back. But that's where the accusation audit becomes important, because it gives us that ability to kind of step back and look at things from a different perspective. Because if we can do that, then I think we can actually maybe even occasionally solve the relationship.
So it's about communication is what I'm hearing you say. And out of
100%.
that communication, there could be understanding. And it's also, is it also connected to determining what you really want out of the situation as well? I
Mm-hmm.
think sometimes people go into it in a survival mode or in a not necessarily even a defensive, but an aggressive mode, and they don't even know what the end result that they would like to see. And having this backing up and really breaking it down to where you could take a look at it from a distance, not the forest for the you can't see the forest because of the trees, you're too close to it. And this backs you up to say what's most valuable, what is the thing that I want to happen at the end when it's all said and done.
100%. And the other big factor is having a realistic expectation of what are you asking for? Because we get this situation a lot. I want my 50% custody. Okay. Let me just ask you a question. Where do you live? Well, I live in Long Beach, California, right on the coast. Okay. Where does mom live? Well, mom's in Riverside, which is about 100 miles east. And you want to tell me you want to have 50-50 custody. Fine. Where's the kid going to go to school, and how are you going to get him there when it's your time?
Covina.
I hadn't. Oh, that's a good point. Yeah, that's a good point. Your expectation is you want 50% custody, but it's not realistic because the logistics become a factor. So when people actually can take a look at the whole picture, then they can see like, oh, there's real problems with what I'm asking
For my business, where I deal a lot with businesses, it was occurring to me as we've gone through this. We haven't talked about this. These same tools could be really worked well where you have a partnership that is breaking up, that, whatever where there's connection and you're having to separate out and divide things up and whatever. But I want to be looking at it as tools that I give clients that are going through some struggles that way and say, it's actually a divorce, it's just not the same kind of divorce.
Marriage is a business contract. Disney has given many people the wrong impression of what marriage is. Happily ever after, great in the movies, not so much the reality. Yeah. The reality is there's a lot of concessions that have to be made. There's a lot of rough spots that have to be worked through. And so, yes, it's definitely a partnership. And in business, you've got the same thing. I've had my business partner for since 1992. We've been friends and we've been in business together since 1998. So that's what, 27 years now we're actually in business. It's not always been just glorious.
And it's unusual to have something last that long as well.
Yeah, we're both very lucky to have that. Um, but that comes back to what are we actually striving for? Do we want to have the long-term partnership? Because I've prioritized that, as has he. And I think that that same principle applies in relationships. We have to prioritize the unit of marriage over our individual desires. And when that gets out of balance, when people are more like, well, I want to be happy. Well, I need this. Well, I'm not getting enough of that. Okay, I understand that. But you have to look at like, what's the goal? Is the goal long-term, stable, monogamous relationship? That's going to require sacrificing communication on both parts. Not always easy to accomplish.
I don't know that it's ever easy to accomplish because they always say opposites attract.
Yeah,
That's a recipe for disaster. You know, I had said that, coming up, it's 51 years for my wife, but when we got married, there was a pool created for how long it would be before we got divorced because
really.
she's an analytical driver. I'm an expressive driver. And even one of the chaplains that gave the exam, he goes, well, you guys are going to be a train wreck, but you'll figure it out. Well, thanks a lot. And so it's one of these things is that how do we get our needs met? What are the things that are most important to us? And by going through some of these things, even if it's, our uh, some of our family members have gone through divorce in the last year or so, and it takes two to be able to reconcile. But if they have some tools to do some of that with, you know, it's going to be easier and less expensive to do if it does come and they decide the divorce is the right action, then it's about keeping the assets in their pocket
Mhm.
instead of in the court system and with attorneys.
Absolutely. I'm always amazed at what people expect they're going to get at the end of a divorce. They think that they're going to have a whole new life and someone new is going to come along and they're going to be so much better. And honestly, my observation has been in general, you're pretty much punching in the same weight class. Like you're not going to make a huge jump from like Joe the plumber to all of a sudden you're dealing with state senator. Like if you're dating a plumber, you're probably going to go marry another plumber in reality, in that same kind of category. Like if you're pulling a certain level of person, your next one's probably going to be very similar. And
But
people need
what
to
you're
have a
saying,
realistic, it comes back to realistic expectations of what does it mean.
well, and so what you're saying by going through this process of understanding, not only through for the process itself, but understanding yourself, you could break and do a change in reality for that next relationship.
Right. But also understanding that that next relationship is probably not going to be that different than the one you're in.
Unless this would be my challenge to you, unless you understand what triggered the first relationship. What was the thing that drew you to that and why? Now
Sure.
you have some awareness, and instead of just being a pheromone hit and here we are, we're going down the aisle again to what's actually most valuable. And when you do this work through what you're putting together and the tools there, now they have more information for themselves to hopefully not get in the same situation with the next relationship.
Right.
So,
Absolutely.
I get where I am so excited about this is that it's not just a divorce book. It's not how to get the most out of divorce and how to penalize the other person that hurt your feelings or whatever the circumstances are, but it's actually a relationship book before, during, and after, and then
Mhm.
before the next event, if there's a next event. And it's uh, I'm just so happy that you've been able to synthesize this down because already people are using this in different forms. This is the first time you put this together in this form,
Right.
and they're getting the benefit out of it, and they're seeing why and how they got into the situation, how to mitigate the outcome for the situation, and then how not to duplicate and have a better situation afterwards. And so it has all kinds of application, not just a singular.
100%. Because, like in my video courses, I teach people how to do some public speaking. It's a very short piece, but it's starting to take some of the heat out of that fear of public speaking. And that's a skill that once you have it, it's going to, if you're a salesperson, it's going to improve your sales ability. If you're a manager, it's going to improve your ability dealing with employees. If you're working in any kind of corporate environment where you have to ever do any kind of public speaking, as you become more comfortable, you're going to become more effective. So, yes, there's all kinds of skills that come out of this, along with in the course itself of just going through that process of learning how to formulate an argument, how to take facts and put them together in such a way to build your case. What are we doing when we're doing sales? What's your need? Here's the benefits of what I'm selling. Here's how it matches up with your need.
Well, again, I'd like to open it up if there's any questions with folks that are joining us live. I'm not seeing anything in the chat at the moment. While we're waiting a second, how can they get the book? I don't have that information. I had texted you right before. And I went, oh, I forgot. How do they connect with you for the book itself?
The easiest way is to go to dadslawschool.com. and there'll be a banner that's going to pop up and it'll just take you right to the checkout page.
So dadslawschool.com.
Yep. I
Cool.
try and make things simple. It's like, who's my market? Dads. What am I teaching them? Law. Okay.
Well, that's kind of for all of us, it just, we need something that's easily remembered and easily accomplished, unlike some of the technology that we have. So,
Totally.
but we've got about 35 minutes, and we did not have a time frame on this. What are some of your, thoughts that you'd like to leave us with as we pull together the ending here?
I think the biggest thing is that dads need to be, if you know a dad that needs this, and the reality is that there's a lot of dads who are out there who are lonely, isolated, they're overwhelmed. And when men are overwhelmed, they usually go into one of two places. They either go straight to anger, which is a very bad place in family court. It's not going to play well with the judge. It's not going to play well with minors counsel and social workers. Or worse, they shut down and they do nothing. That's the worst thing that can happen to the dads, because that means that they're going to let somebody else run their future. And so the goal of Dad's Child Custody Action Plan is to give dads who are in that place of overwhelm, who are on the verge of shutting down, here's something to do. It's 140 pages. It's written in very plain language. I really wanted to have a book that is easy to read. It's not tiny print. It's not jammed together. It's not one of those books that's going to be like, this is going to take me a month to read. No, this is designed. You can read this 2 evenings, pizza and a half. The goal is to get the information to you easily and quickly so that you can start taking action, because that's what these dads need. They need to get into action, because when a man is in action, then they start feeling better. Then they're happier. Now they can be a better father for their child. Now they can be a better partner for their new girlfriend or wife. They can be better all around if they're actually in action doing something.
And that's the other thing that I hadn't brought up, is that you did not put a bunch of legalese in here to where you need an attorney to determine what the words mean and everything. There's a person that hosts one of our large radio stations here, and her father was an attorney. And she came to him one time and she goes, "Why are all these big words here?" He goes, "Well, if they weren't big words, nobody would come and pay me to figure out what it said."
That's right.
And it's not dumbing it down. It's just putting it in words that are recognizable and understandable.
Mm-hmm.
And if you understand it, then you're going to be able to know how to apply it.
Exactly. And that's the goal. Because the reality is I'm advocating for children. I want children to have their fathers in their life. That's the important part. At the end of the day, that's what they need. There's always lots of focus on child support and don't be a deadbeat dad. You got to pay your child support. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I get that. That's all important stuff. It's also important that dads are there in person, having time, teaching lessons that moms just can't teach, because moms teach different lessons. There's a reason why we have two different types of humans raising children.
Well, and that's why you've been dubbed. You didn't take on the moniker of TikTok dad. They started calling you that. In fact, I think
Sure.
you went into a storefront and they recognized you, and they said, "Oh, you're the TikTok dad."
Yes.
And so it has evolved, and obviously there's a great need out there. And so whether or not, when anyone sees this video, or looks at the book, whether or not it's something that you individually have a need for, hopefully not, but I'm guessing that there's people around you. You'll hear, maybe it's a family member, maybe it's somebody just in the community, in a service group, somebody at your children's school that is going through this situation. Let them know about the resource, because this is something that will be changing lives, and that's what I'm all about as well. So I still don't see a question in the chat. So any last thought, or are we good?
I think we're good. I think, we've got a lot of good information out there. If people want more, they can go to dadslawschool.com. If you want to find me on TikTok, it's Dad's Law School. If you want to find me on Instagram, it's Dad's Law School. YouTube, it's Dad's Law School. There's a theme here.
He doesn't hide at all. And I tell you, he's one of the most personable people I've ever met. And having that along with the law degree is impressive. So,
Thank you, Gary. I appreciate
you
it.
know, with that, thank you everyone for being with us for a few minutes in the evening. I know everyone's busy and have so many different things going on that we value your time. So go take a look. You know, dadslawschool.com or uh, yeah, dadslawschool.com is where the book is.
Correct.
And we'll see you on the next video or interview that we'll be doing. So I appreciate everyone. We'll talk to you later. Bye.
Thanks, Gary.